Hey, welcome in. Dan French here, Wealthytainment. Great show for you today. We're going to talk about Grant Cardone slamming Dave Ramsey. And Grant Cardone, you know who he is. He's that mogul that apparently he's got $5 billion in apartment investment complexes. And he's a real estate investor. And so his whole thing is, he comes on Vlad TV recently. And it's interesting because his concept is there is good debt that you can use by leveraging debt to buy things that will pay you, right? He's got the 10x rule. He's got a lot of things out there of how to teach and become wealthy and some of the tactics and ways that he's become wealthy. And maybe it's not for everybody. I think some people will follow a lot of what he says, and there's a lot of people that won't. Now, he came out on Vlad TV, which is another platform, and he basically came out and stated that Dave Ramsey, his philosophy is really not what you should be doing, right? It's not something you should be following because paying off debt and saving money, that's not how you become wealthy. And the argument is, if you want to become wealthy or you want to become rich or you want to be at a success level of, let's say, Grant Cardone, you don't want to follow Dave Ramsey's philosophy and the steps that he's taken. Let's go and look and see what Dave Ramsey and what he does for this. Now, what Dave Ramsey comes out and talks about is, get out of debt and save up fully funded emergency fund, invest 15% of your income, invest in good stock, keep a long-term perspective, invest consistently, and work with a financial advisor. Obviously, the big one is getting out of debt. And so with that philosophy, there's nothing wrong with that. If you look at what I would look at, what type of clientele or criteria of person that would be following that model, it's probably the middle class person, right? The lower to middle class person, maybe even the upper middle class person that can't get over that hump. And there's a place for that. Now, if you're trying to go and become that entrepreneur like, what Grant Cardone wants or what he has become, that's a different topic, right? It's kind of like when you look at, I'll give you a figure of maybe of an understanding of an example that somebody came across to me recently, which is if you're trading stocks, right? You have a day trader, totally different. It's totally completely different of how you day trade and the money that's needed and the investment risk versus somebody that's a long-term, stock trader or a stockholder, right? So you have different ways of doing things, and it's really about who your persona is as a person and how you want to invest and how you want to take the approach of becoming what you think in your mindset is wealthy. Maybe getting $1 million to some people is just not attainable, but using Dave Ramsey's philosophy, maybe you get there. I'm not a Dave Ramsey homer at all, but I'm just saying everybody's different. And so when you look at Grant Cardone, he's saying, look, don't use those tactics. He does have credit cards, Grant Cardone. He does use credit, but he doesn't pay credit card debt or anything of that sort, right? What he pays is, or what he gets, or what he uses is the leverage from using debt to gain assets, right? Buildings and apartment complexes and things that potentially will pay you down the road. So his argument is don't follow Dave Ramsey's rule because you're never going to get to a point where you're, wealthy. I don't know. Everybody has a difference of what wealthy is, but it comes down to, I remember a situation for me where people were telling me, don't buy investment properties, it's not the right time. And I'll be honest, if it does not cash flow, it's not a good time to buy if you're buying an investment property. But if you're buying an investment property or buying a property in general, because you're looking at the long-term result, I feel that properties are going to come down, but you never know what's going to happen in the market. So it really comes down to that person and that person taking a risk. I always say there's no perfect time to buy a property, but what I can say is traditionally shelter and homes always have gone up. Hence, that's why I think that, you look at Grant Cardone and him buying apartment complexes, he was in financial trouble at one point. There's a lot of debt out there and he was in financial trouble. Obviously he's come out of it. We haven't heard anything in the news that he's still in the same situation, but there's a risk to it. What Dave Ramsey's situation, what he's doing is it's less risk and it's more of a calculated, hey, we're going to slowly get there. And it's going to take a process where I feel you look at Grant Cardone, you're leveraging, you're risking, and you're taking, leaps to get there. And then it comes down to that 10X rule that he comes into. But let's look and see what Grant Cardone had to say about Dave Ramsey here in this recent interview that he had with Vlad TV.
Dave Ramsey, I mean, look, Dave, you're a good dude, but look, Dave Ramsey is he's like all debt is bad debt. If the TV company and radio house didn't use debt, you wouldn't have a show, pal. Like, don't bite the old horse in the mouth or whatever that saying is, the gift horse or whatever. Like, if you didn't use debt, you wouldn't have a show, right? The publishing company that publishes your books, if they didn't use debt, you wouldn't have a book. Like, it's not true what he's telling people. What happened to Dave Ramsey was he took on too much debt, it busted him, and he went on to become an educator that debt's bad. Well, yeah, but then he goes on to say you shouldn't borrow money. He wouldn't borrow money to buy a car. He would ride a bike to work. It's stupid, man. It doesn't make any sense. You live in New York City, you might need transportation, right? If you live in Kansas City, you're probably going to need a car because you might live in Houston, Texas, you're going to be 45 minutes outside the energy corridor. You're going to have to get there with your kids. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So lastly, I'll say this about Dave. If I was on TV every damn day, man, you know how rich I would be? Dave's worth about $50 million. Okay, that's what my plane costs. He ain't buying a plane.
I feel you, man. Like I said, I agree with you.
So you can see what he's saying. Basically, he's coming out stating that, Dave Ramsey has not been at the success level as Grant Cardone has been, or himself. And again, there's a different path for everybody. And for you looking at the situation, I always say everybody has to start somewhere. You can't just sit there and say, okay, well, I'm going to start and become Grant Cardone and have the same tactic and same work ethic and the same process of Grant Cardone. That doesn't make it right? What he's doing doesn't think that that's the only way that you're going to be able to be successful, is that you got to follow Grant Cardone's way. There is a place out there for Dave Ramsey and how people follow Dave Ramsey. I think traditionally as a whole, there's a bigger risk to take when you leverage your debt the way that Grant Cardone did. And in today's world, look at rates. You got to look at the interest rates. Does it really cash flow? A lot of what he did was when prices and rates were really a lot lower than they are today. So you got to think that, is that really the best tactic in today's market, in today's world? It's all about pivoting. It's about knowing what your market is, and then ultimately knowing who you are as a person. And I don't think there's a wrong way either way. I just think it's about risk and tolerance, and what are you willing, and what is your persona as a person, what you're going to be able to accomplish. And you have to know that in yourself, right? So for Grant Cardone to come out and, slam the fact that Dave Ramsey, his way of saying pay off all debt, and, that's not the way, and invest into mutual funds, and that's his philosophy, and, 15% into tax and other, being more conservative. That's really what it comes down to. Dave Ramsey's saying, look, this is what worked for me. This is a more conservative approach. Where you look at Grant Cardone, I mean, let's be honest. There's been times where we've heard that he's been in situations where it could have gone either way. You never hear about that about Dave Ramsey. But did you sustain the same wealth? Has Dave Ramsey sustained the same wealth as Grant Cardone? No, he's not. So it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I feel there's no difference. Like I said, for me, I was investing into investment property. It worked out for me, but there was a risk, right? I have, a few properties that I invested into, and it could have went sideways. But the reason I did it was I knew rates were going to go up. I knew prices of homes were going up at that time. And I said, I better put my money into something that will pay me. So I followed the Grant Cardone way, but that doesn't mean it's the best way. It really depends on what your risk tolerance is. I have people, my parents, people that just want to go to work 9 to 5 and slowly build their wealth, or slowly save their money, or slowly pay things off. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, if you're an entrepreneur and you're a risk taker, that's either going to make or break you. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Leave any comments in the comment section. I'd love to answer your questions, and we'll see you guys at the next one. I'm out of here.